It's 5 minutes long, is that okay?
Yes.
Cool. And can you hear me at the back okay?
Yes.
Cool. This story is called The Storymaker. He sat at his typewriter, looking at the same blank sheet that had been mocking him for days. In spite of his long years of writing and his large numbers of stories, he still felt helpless when no new story appeared. When one eventually arrived and he finished writing it, he always wondered if it would be his last one. He fished in the pocket of his old jacket and pulled out his pipe, tobacco and matches. As he was lighting up, the door of his tiny den opened and in came a little boy. The Storymaker took a look at the boy's troubled face and invited him onto his knee, their special meeting place, when there was something important to be said. He puffed at his pipe and waited patiently while the boy worked out how to begin. "Grandpa," said the boy at last, "can I tell you something?" "Of course, Michael. Tell me why you look so sad." "It's about Squeaky," Michael began. The old man listened intently as his grandson told his tale, interjecting, "Oh really? And is that so?" to show his interest without interrupting the boy's thoughts. Eventually the whole thing had been told, and the boy looked up for absolution. His grandpa gave him an understanding acknowledgement, and the little boy gave a big smile. He slipped off his grandpa's knee and ran out the door. The old man fiddled absently with his pipe, his habit when things were working in his fertile mind. Concepts were taking shape, characters vying for his attention, chains of cause and effect falling into place. He put his pipe down unlit next to the tobacco and matches and pulled his chair close to the desk. Downstairs in the kitchen, his daughter Sally smiled as she heard the clatter of the typewriter, a sound that had been missing for too long. The typing continued as night fell and the rest of the family went to bed. Eventually, silence descended. Up in his den, the Storymaker pulled the last sheet from the machine, shuffled the pages together, and sat back to review his work. This was always a special moment. The painter sees his creation forming before his eyes, but the writer works one sentence at a time, not seeing the whole at a glance. When he finishes and reads through his work, he has his first experience of how his writing will affect the reader. He took up the first sheet and started to read. By the time he was halfway through, he had confirmed his suspicion. This was no ordinary story, no common creation. The simple beginning, telling of a little boy and what happened to his pet hedgehog, soon gave way to poetry and then took flight as it touched on the nature of man and his quest for immortality. Tears rolled down his face as he surrendered to the beauty and power of the words. He had no doubt that the Pulitzer Prize, which had eluded him all his life, would escape him no longer. This moment is experienced only once in the lifetime of an artist. Shakespeare writing Hamlet's immortal speech, Beethoven penning the most famous 4 notes in all of Western music, Da Vinci painting that enigmatic smile. He now knew how they must have felt in that moment. So enwrapped was he that he did not notice the door open. "Grandpa?" The old man looked up. "Hmm? Grandpa, you won't tell anyone, will you?" He looked down at the little figure, clad in pyjamas, hair tousled, his favourite teddy bear dangling from his hand, a worried look on his face. "Of course not, Michael." He smiled and touched the side of his nose, their code for keeping a secret. The worry vanished from Michael's face and he beamed. He touched the side of his nose in reply and skipped happily out the door. The Storymaker sat there, the smile frozen on his face, although its audience had gone. After a moment, he picked up the sheets and started the second reading. He savoured every word, every phrase, every emotion. He marvelled at the breadth of the concepts, at the progression of the ideas, at the genius of the metaphor. He laughed aloud at the surprising turn in the tale. Finally, he laid down the last page. He gave a brief nod, the only acknowledgement his masterpiece would ever receive, and reached for the matches.
Oh.